Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Oh my sweet Dank Ferrick, have you seen the final episode of The Mandalorian Season 2? I am going to try and stay professional. I am going to try to keep my fangirl squealing down to a safe minimum, but I'm just going to warn you right off the bat, I was making so much noise while I was watching the episode that my outdoor barn cats decided to come in and check on me to make sure I was okay. Today we are going to look at The Rescue, the 16th chapter of The Mandalorian. Oh my sweet mercy, this was nearly perfect. I don't know where to begin. A lot of predictions were right. We got a lot of what we were expecting. A lot of predictions were wrong. We didn't see some things and we saw some other things. Boy and howdy though did the conclusion feel satisfying. And the end credits scene, oh, Dank Ferrick. Okay, needless to say, there are going to be a lot of spoilers going forward, so you have been warned. The spoiler-free review could be summed up in screams and yelps. Again, I freaked out my cats, and once they're Maine Coon mixes, so they're very, very friendly and loving. They're basically dogs. They felt the need to come into the house to check on me to make sure I was okay. So, the review. Remember, all of the spoilers are coming. You've been warned. Like most of the episode this season, this episode hits the ground running. We meet up with the gang as they swoop in on the Slave 1, or is it Slave 2? I forget. Anyway, we meet them as they zoom in on an Imperial shuttle holding none other than Dr. Pershing, a very sensible pilot who wants to live, and a not-so-sensible pilot with less ambitious goals. Going with the running theme of more accents. I mean, as terrifying as a British gentleman is, the Empire is a big place, and just like in The Death of Stalin, it makes sense that these people have different accents, even if it's in one language. So this dude has a very Russian or Eastern European accent. That is the less sensible pilot. Then Mando and his crew snatch up Dr. Pershing after the less sensible pilot has gotten both pilots killed and confirm that baby Grogu is in fact still alive. Then we scene jump to a very interesting dive bar. Now, on a world with a large industrial base and not much else. In fact, I was wondering if this world might be Lothal. It's just that Lothal does have those big factories out in the middle of nowhere, and that open grasslands, plainslands look. I don't know if it is Lothal, though. Now, bars and cantinas in Star Wars up to this point have had one thing in common that I didn't even question or notice until this one broke the pattern. The bartenders have all been scruffy and dirty up to this point, but the bartender in this joint is a lovely person in a beautiful flowing Camino that's a brilliant fiery red, and there was that color that just stood out against the background. And there's other splashes of color in this bar. It goes against the dingy it goes against the pattern of dingy dirty dives without breaking into the original prequels. They had that thing going on where the diners were just all outlandish, garish colors. No, this is a bar. It's got that overall subdued tones, but it has brilliant splashes of color in it, which is just very interesting because it's so different from anything that we've seen before. Also, the bar is rather clean and orderly, as such places go. Just an interesting change of pace. But the real allure of the bar was clearly who was there. Bo-Katan and her sidekick gal are having themselves a non-blue going cup of booze when Mando and Boba stomp in and ask for their help. This scene. Just the part where Mando and Boba stride into the room and just change the atmosphere of the place with their mere presence. You can see one of the smarter customers just kind of, sneaking out the door as soon as they clear it. Oh, yeah, that was pretty funny. Thinking back, I would love to see more of this, just two Mandalorians going and doing their thing. Thinking back, that was the kind of show we expected before Baby Grogu showed up. Not that I'm complaining about what we got, but boy am I looking forward to the Book of Boba next Christmas. Bo-Katan shows her prejudice, which at this point is way worse than Mando's ever was, and her ability to cut a man to the quick by hitting below the belt right off the bat. Boba firmly establishes whether or not he's a true Mandalorian. Then the obligatory bar fight to prove whose sidekick is the toughest ensues. Mando displays that charming ignorance of wider Mandalorian culture that drives home the point that he was raised in a cult. Then, as everyone expected, Bo-Katan signs up and ships off with the gang. Now here's where the plot twists really start. Pershing was a perfectly logical source of information, and that they only take Pershing with them was perfectly logical as well. Mando knew he was sympathetic to the child at least, and willing to defy the people who employed him to some point, and it only made sense that Mando would seek Bo-Katan's help also when facing down the Imperials. But you expected Dr. Pershing to go alone. I thought Bo-Katan would bring at least a flight of Mandalorians with her, but for some reason Bo-Katan only brings herself and her right-hand woman on the job to go after the target that she's been hunting desperately for years. Why? Why didn't she bring all of her resources to bear on Moff Gideon? Or at the very least some backup. We saw one other Mandalorian with her, and they took down that entire cargo ship. The simplest explanation would be that she didn't have the time to get more forces. Perhaps they were spread too thin. But there's another possibility. Perhaps she didn't want to risk bringing in more Mandalorians who actually understood the true value of the Darksaber, and that would mean she would run the risk of having one of them claim it. On the other hand, she was grimly drinking in the bar when we first see her. Maybe that one loyal lady was all she had left. Maybe she's lost control of the other resources. Maybe they kicked her out. Was Bo-Katan possibly on the outs with the rest of the surviving Mandalorians? How many Mandalorians are surviving at this point anyway? Did the guy we saw in the last episode just bite it? Anyway, with the crew complete, we jump to the Slave 1 or 2 following the Imperial shuttle through hyperspace. Now here's where I admit I completely lost the script. I was so excited in the moment, I actually thought that somehow that was an Imperial pilot on the shuttle and that Slave 1 was just being super sneaky behind them. My brain somehow maintained that delusion right up to the point that the Imperial shuttle crashed into the bay and the crew deboards. I mean, there was an entire scene just before where Bo-Katan spells out the plan, and my brain somehow edited that part out and forgot about it by the time the ships broke hyperspace. I guess I was just that caught up in the story. Meanwhile, Dr. Pershing is a lovely source of exposition this entire time. We learn that the merry band of heroes will be facing down Phase 3 Dark Troopers with the unstable human element removed. These are pure droids, and the show doesn't let us forget that for a moment. They move like machines. There are no wasted movements, no organic motions. These are Terminators in the motion sense. They are soldiers made of steel and coating. There is no spite, no hate, no emotion, only menace for their beholders. And they use a lot of energy, and this gives our heroes the necessary time to lock them in their cage for a moment. There is an awesome battle scene where Mando gets a chance to use his spear, and you wonder, Beskar armor or not, how is Mando's head still attached to his body at this point? The combat is just brutal. Brutal enough that the scene went past being pleasant for me. But given that I am an admitted wimp when it comes to that sort of thing, I think the rest of the fandom is just going to get a kick out of it. Or rather, they are going to get a series of absolutely brutal punches to the face out of it. Then there is a brilliant bit of directing. Our heroes get rid of the Dark Troopers for the moment, but they know, and more importantly, the audience knows that the Dark Troopers are going to come back and be a threat again very, very soon. And for the rest of the episode, they are hanging over the audience on their thruster boots. Then there is the touching reunion between Baby Yoda and Din. Baby Yoda reaches out with his little cuffed hands for Din, even as the threat of death looms over them. There is the awesome climactic battle between the spear-wielding Mando and the Darksaber-wielding Moff Gideon that we all expected. But to be honest, I can't say I was disappointed in the scene itself. Don't get me wrong. It was an awesome fight, but I was rather disdainful of Moff Gideon. We expected it to be a fair fight, and for the most part it was, but that's only because Moff Gideon had the drop on Mando with the initial strike. Added to that, Mando had his dominant arm nearly wrenched off sideways by the Dark Trooper just moments before, and has had his spine pretty well traumatized as well. Moff Gideon was as fresh of a daisy and in perfect shape, and Mando still manages to meet him blow for blow. With all that against our hero, he still manages to best Moff Gideon pretty quickly. The fight was over fast. Honestly, I was expecting more from the good Moff. He wasn't exactly a pushover. You have to be a pretty great fighter just to stand up to Mando at all, but Moff Gideon was clearly far too big for his britches and had a very swollen estimation of his own powers. If that one Dark Trooper hadn't managed to mangle Mando a bit before he got there, that fight would not have been worth watching. Now, then came the scene I was really, truly hoping for. Mando drags Moff Gideon back to Bo-Katan alive, just as she requested, so that Moff Gideon could surrender to her personally. And that is when Moff Gideon's acting really starts. He is just delighted, giddy with pleasure at the scene. You see, Bo-Katan is not happy with Mando, and Mando is, in his delightful ignorance, is deeply puzzled why. Moff Exposition then proceeds to detail exactly why she is so very not happy. Din shrugs and tries to hand the Darksaber to her. While Moff Expedition all but giggles, he explains that Bo-Katan has to defeat Mando for it. You can just feel Mando roll his eyes under the armor as he says, "I yield." Then, the scene is derailed by the Dark Troopers showing up again, boot-thrusting their way back into the bay. Moff Gideon chuckles his way through, pointing out how much trouble Mando had with just one, and now there's an entire platoon after them. You really get the feeling that Moff Gideon just loves chaos here, for all that he might preach order. Then, the Jedi shows up that we have all been expecting this entire 2 seasons. Remember how I said the episode The Jedi was just indulgent, how the camera lingered over the limbs and joints of the Dark Troopers, how the scenes tarry over Boba Fett's brutal beating of the Stormtroopers, how the main point seems to indulge not just the fans but the very creators themselves, the art directors, the actors, the writers, the practical effects mechanics. Everyone involved was being indulged by the scene that displayed the work. Well, that episode has nothing on the indulgence in this episode. The Jedi enters, and the first clue to who it is not the Jedi, but who is with the Jedi. You see, the Dark Troopers just stop. They just stop their assault on the main cast. Now, why? Surely an enemy ship had docked and supplying a greater threat, perhaps, but they should have remained focused. But you see, Jedi can't really work their mind trickery on droids. There is one reason the Separatists used a droid army on the Clone Wars. A Jedi can't mentally mess with droids. But, another droid could. Then the real indulgence begins, as we watched a cloaked and hooded Jedi tear through the Dark Troopers like so much confetti. I was perhaps just a little disappointed in the Dark Troopers too. I kind of wanted them to put up a better fight, to be a threat for a little longer. But on the other mechanical hand, that we catch a glimpse of the identity of the Jedi is slowly and gradually revealed. The shell-shocked main cast opened the doors to let the Jedi in. It was Luke. Of course it was Luke. You were 90% sure when you saw the X-Wing and 100% sure when the green lightsaber flared to life. But they had to do the slow reveal. And then as the doors open, we get a recreation, not of any of the bright and cheerful scenes from the original 3 movies, but a recreation of Darth Vader's entrance into the Rebel ship in Rogue One, the hallway scene, which I thought was very, very odd at the time. Of all the images they could have used, of all the bright and light side ways to portray the hero of heroes of the Star Wars universe, why Dank Farrik did they choose to link him visually to one of the darkest moments of his father's life? Why? That almost jerked me out of the story. I mean, in the context of the story, it was perfect, it was intense, it was cool. But why? Are they hinting at something that's going to go wrong in the future? Are they hinting at a threat that Luke might pose to baby Grogu? Why? Why the Darth Vader imagery for Luke, the hope of the galaxy Skywalker? However, the show moves on far too quickly to linger on this moment. We get the heartbreaking goodbye between Din and Grogu, where Din is forced to give his blessing for his son to leave him before Grogu will leave him. Then there's an amusing moment where R2 shows up and talks to baby Grogu, and it hits you that there's a huge chance that baby Grogu knows R2, that these 2 little gremlins might actually be old friends, that Grogu might have just been given a tiny beeping part of his old life back. Then Luke takes baby Grogu and swoops off in his X-Wing, leaving behind a broken-hearted Mando. It was everything we wanted, except more. For that, we have to wait over an entire year. Then the end credits started to roll, and for the first time ever, I watched them all the way through. Because, you see, I checked the progress bar, and as it had hit me several times already, there was too much time left. I didn't want to scroll past the end credits this time, however, because for the end credits scene, because there was one thing I had to know first. That Jedi who battled the Dark Troopers had the body of a young man. He was trim, slim. There was no way that was Mark Hamill, but it didn't look like any of the candidates that the fans had lined up to replace him. Now, clearly that was Mark Hamill's voice, but Mark Hamill is an experienced voice actor. Whose was the body? I watched eagerly as the actors' names flashed in order of appearance, making the making this actor's name come last, of course. I was expecting 2 names, a voiced by name and an acted by name, but there was only one, the only Mark Hamill. Dank Ferrick, their de-aging methods have gotten good. I honestly didn't notice a thing wrong with his face. On the other hand, that body we see in the fight scenes probably was a stunt double, but still, that last scene, I am really interested in how they did that, because I did not get that creepy feeling at all. There was a little, faint aftertaste of it. I felt like I should be getting that creepy feeling, because I was staring at young Mark Hamill's face. Then the end credits. On the one hand, there was nothing special about it. There is a shootout as the big boss. The end credits scene, the scene that comes after the end credits. And on the one hand, there's nothing special about it. There's a shootout as the big boss returns to reclaim what is rightfully his. The usurper begs for his life. The slaves are freed. The alcohol is drunk in salute to the triumphant return. On the other hand, I cannot wait for the Book of Boba Fett to come around next Christmas. This is no tale of how he escaped the Sarlacc pit. This is moving forward, either before or after retaking Mandalore, we don't know. Knowing Boba, he probably split as soon as Baby Yoda was safe. What does he care about the planet Mandalore? We will see. I am not the best judge of artistic quality, but I have never experienced a more satisfying season finale. So, what do you think, my wonderful viewers? Could it have been better? Were you a teensy bit disappointed in both Gideon and the Dark Troopers? Why did they Darth Vader up the Luke Skywalker entrance? Leave a like below if you agree, and please leave me a comment telling me everything you thought about this episode, because I only have 1 or 2 people in my life to talk with this about, and oh my goodness, I want to talk about this so much. So, peace out, my wonderful viewers. Leave a comment below, leave a like, hit that subscribe button, and if you really want to fill in the time between now and the next episode with some absurd human and alien action, check out the link to buy my book, Humans Are Weird. I have the data. Peace out, my wonderful viewers.